Chaos monsters get all the glory, but they aren't the only powerful cards that utilize the graveyard as fuel for special summoning. In this video, we're going over some of the best monsters that require you to banish 2 or more cards to hit the field, as long as they aren't chaos monsters themselves. And starting out at number 10, we have Dozer. This is a level 8 earth insect with 2800 attack that cannot be normal summon or set. It must first be special summoned from your hand by banishing 2 insects from your grave, and if it inflicts battle damage to your opponent, they mill 1 card. Dozer is effectively a huge vanilla, but it was the first time any card eligible for this list actually saw competitive play. Granted that around the time basically every good chaos monster like Chaos Orc was banned from the game. While there were monsters that special summoned themselves using other attributes like Desert Twister, Frost and Flame Dragon, they were too much of a pain to set up to ever be worth it. Since the trauma from cards like BLS was still fresh on the player base's mind, their effects also required discard costs. Still, while Dozer was effectively vanilla on the field, at least its summoning condition wasn't hard to achieve at all. Getting 2 insects into the grave was deceptively easy due to advanced ritual art, which can ritual summon a monster from your hand using normal monsters from your deck. While playing actual vanillas feels pretty bad, at least they were huge beaters in a pinch. The payoff for putting all of this into your deck was the ability to easily summon Demise, a level 8 ritual monster, which can pay 2,000 life points to blow up all other cards on the field. This was a time before either Gores or Battle Fader, so if this effect went through, you could then summon Dozer and dome your opponent for 5,200 points of damage, without even spending your normal summon. Then, if you either had a way to boost Dozer with a card like Megamorph, or to bring out another huge beater like Premature Burial, you'd win the game on the spot. It might sound a bit janky nowadays, but that was the reason why both Advanced Ritual Art and Demise were on the ban list for quite a while. And that's enough merit to earn this insect the 10th spot on this list. And at number 9, we have Dark Simorgh. This is a 2700 attack, dark, winged beast level 7 monster that is also treated as the wind attribute while face up on the field. If it's in your hand, you can banish 1 dark and 1 wind monster from your graveyard to special summon it. And if it's in your graveyard, you can special summon it by banishing 1 dark and wind monster from your hand instead. While it's on the field, your opponent cannot set cards. Dark Simorgh's effect is simple and yet extremely effective against the right sort of deck. If you can't set cards, that basically means flip monsters like Raikou and trap cards like Compulse are completely unusable while it's on the field. The biggest downside for Dark Simorgh was always that wind has historically been a pretty lackluster attribute overall. While it does floodgate the opponent, it's the sort of card you'd only have set up after a few turns of playing the game back then, after the opponent had all the time in the world to set everything they wanted. This card also always had an innate combo when paired with Anti-Spell Fragrance, since that would also disable your opponent from playing any spells. But that was far too hard to pull off for it to be worth it. So while it was a quite old card, it really only started seeing play once flip effects were more or less irrelevant, though trap decks have pretty much always been around. People first played around with this card in Monarch decks once they got their first wave of support, since it could be searched by Ether, and you always had the opportunity to tribute summon it instead of using its effect. Funnily enough, the next time it would see play in side decks was in another tribute summon based deck, Fluendereeze, which can easily get to it through Eaglin, and it can really carry you in matchups like Labyrinth. However, the card was never really that big in the meta, and it's basically gone now as Fluendereeze is pretty bad in the TCG, OCG, and Master Duel. The fact that all the decks that played it preferred to tribute summon it rather than use its summoning condition shows how little its own effect mattered for this card's success. And at number 8, we have Diabellstar Vengeance. This level 7 Dark Spellcaster is always treated as a Sinful Spoils card. It can special summon itself from your hand or graveyard by banishing 1 spell and 1 trap from your hand and or graveyard. It also has a quick effect to pay half your life points to destroy 1 opponent's card. And if you control another Diabell monster, you can follow it up by special summoning a Tuner, Synchro, Illusion, or Spellcaster monster from your extra deck. Diabellstar Vengeance was the final culmination of the Diabellstar Black Witch storyline, and its existence basically single-handedly ties up the Diabell, Sinful Spoils, White Forest, and Azamina archetypes. While it does take some work to set her up, as you really don't want to have to banish cards from your hand to special summon her, she gives you a quick effect pop that also brings out extra interaction straight from your extra deck. Those being either Silvera, which can flip down an opponent's field, or a Poplar to synchro summon on your opponent's turn. And while you could theoretically play her in any deck that uses spells or traps, Her combination of name and effect makes her endlessly searchable within a White Forest deck. Since she is a Diabellstar monster, she can be searched by Wanted and Filia, or dumped to the graveyard by Diabells. And since she's also a Sinful Spoils card, she can be searched directly by Mu-Ursulaggo and LZ. The fact that she's a Sinful Spoils card not only makes her extra searchable, but it also lets you use her as a fusion material for the Hollowed Azamina, a card which usually only lets you reveal spells to bring out your Azamina fusions. While White Forest kinda got overshadowed by another archetype from the same story in Snake Eyes, Diabellstar Vengeance did help the deck have some competitive relevance, both before and after the Snake Eyes themselves were banned. Next up at number 7, we have Rescue Ace Turbulence. This is a level 9 fire machine with 3000 attack and 3000 defense. It can be special summoned from your hand by banishing 2 Rescue Ace cards from your graveyard. During your main phase, it lets you set up to 4 Rescue Ace quick play spells and normal traps from your deck directly. Lastly, if another card you control leaves the field by an opponent's card, you can target a card in the field and destroy it. Adding cards from the deck to the hand is one of the best effects in Yu-Gi-Oh! In the modern game, many archetypes are broken because they get to resolve powerful 2-card searches. However, Turbulence took this yet to another level. Not only does it get you 4 different cards from your deck, it also sets them directly to the field, meaning it doesn't care about either Ash Blossom or Droll Lockbird. And what's even crazy about Turbulence is that its 4 set often translates to 4 ways of interacting with your opponent during their turn. If that wasn't enough, you'd even be able to activate one of them during your turn if you have the archetype's flagship monster, Hydrant, on the field. Rescue Ace first rose to competitive dominance with the release of the same Diabellstar, the Black Witch. This is because, while the deck always had the potential to be strong, it was a tad too bricky and clunky to be a success. With Diabellstar being able to effectively summon Hydrant directly from the deck, that problem was instantly solved. The other issue is that since Turbulence is so good for the deck, it is the strategy's biggest choke point by far. While it does dodge Ash and Droll, that doesn't mean it's immune to either Impermanence or Valor, which were disastrous if they resolved. However, it's not like those were silver bullets, because the set that brought Diabellstar also brought SP Little Knight, which lets you dodge targeted negation, and the deck also had access to Emergency to protect your plays. Still, just like White Forest, the deck was overshadowed by Snake Eyes entirely once Poplar came out, and it got off much worse once Original was banned, since that meant Rescue Ace no longer had the extra ways to get Hydrant that made them viable in the first place. And at number 6, we have Spiral Sleeper. This is a level 8 Dark Machine with 2800 attack, who can only be special summoned from your hand by banishing 3 Spiral cards from your graveyard. Once per turn, as a quick effect, you can target 1 Spiral card you control, to then target up to 2 cards your opponent controls and destroy all of them. Lastly, if this card on the field is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, it makes you destroy as many cards you control as possible to summon a Spiral Super Agent from your hand deck or graveyard. When they were first revealed, the Spiral deck was seen as one of the weaker TCG exclusive archetypes. While there were some clearly good cards like Sleeper and Master Plan, it was a bit too hard to set them up and get full use out of them. That was, of course, until Link Summoning came out. In an era where most older decks were nerfed due to the Master Rule 4 mechanics, Spiral of all decks is one of the first to get an archetypal Link monster to actually let them do their plays, Double Helix. And it was a really good one at that. Helix's effects both gave you a card that was treated as Super Agent while it was out, which is important for the archetype, as well as letting you tutor any Spiral monster from your deck. Link monsters in general were super good for the deck, since being able to put cards like Quick Fix in the grave allowed for some extremely strong combos. And coming back a bit to the main topic of the list, also lets you set up Sleeper really easily. This was a tremendous boss monster for the deck, and while it was accompanied by some really powerful Link monsters such as Trigate Wizard and Firewall Dragon, it could be difficult for many decks to play through its double pop by itself. Its 2 apparent downsides of needing to destroy one of your own Spiral cards, as well as it blowing up your field if it were ever destroyed, were also negated entirely by Last Resort, which could equip itself to Sleeper in order to prevent it from being destroyed, or even targeted by your opponent's effects. Spiral was one of the many Tier 0 threats to plague the TCG, which needed quite a few hits on the ban list to be brought down. And at number 5, we have Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. This level 10 light dinosaur must first be special summoned by banishing 2 dinosaur monsters from your graveyard. Once per turn, as a quick effect, you can destroy 1 monster in your hand or field to change all face-up monsters your opponent controls to face-down defense position. It can also attack all of your opponent's monsters once each. and if it attacks a defense position monster, you can send it to the graveyard and inflict 1000 damage to your opponent. Few types have had as big of a glow up in Yu-Gi-Oh! As dinosaurs did with the release of their unstructured deck, Dino Smasher's Fury. This deck gave them an amazing starter in Oviraptor, a crazy field spell in Lost World, and of course their boss monster, Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, or UCT for short. This is an amazing card to have on the field, both going first and second, since it flips an entire field face down to prevent all sorts of extra deck plays, or just smash into your opponent's monsters and kill them. This sort of quality for a boss monster so easy to set up broke the meta at the time. Not only could it be searched by Oviraptor, its summoning condition was also easily fulfilled by it. You could add a Miscellaneous Source, use its effect to make your dinos unaffected by your opponent's activated effects, search out an Alio from the deck, and use it for a synchro summon of a monster like Chanbara, putting 2 dinos into the graveyard. Still, this was probably the best case scenario if you were up against a dinosaur deck, as if they opened really well, they'd get their dinosaur set up by using Lithosagem to destroy some babies in their hand, and then rip cards from your extra deck while they're at it. Ultimate Conductor Tyranno also has the bonus of being easily tutorable from the deck, even outside of searching it. This is due to Double Evolution Pill, which can banish a dino and a non-dino from your hand or graveyard to summon a level 7 or higher dinosaur from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. Not only did this card give you extra copies of UCT, it also allowed modern iterations of dinos to have powerful combos that ended on the boss monster and much more, as it was searchable by an adored Archosaur. The fact that Miscellaneous Source strays on the ban list to this day shows how much of a threat dinos once were. And at number 4, we have Infernoid Onuncu. This is a level 10 Fire Fiend monster that special summons itself from the hand or graveyard by banishing 3 Infernoid monsters from the hand or graveyard, while the total levels and ranks of all monsters you control are 8 or lower. When special summoned, you can destroy all monsters on the field except itself. It also has a quick effect to tribute a monster to negate and banish an activated spell or trap. All but one of the Infernoid monsters, Decatron, have similar effects of bringing themselves out by banishing other Infernoid names that you have in rotation. However, while most other graveyard-based decks might run the risk of milling their payoffs like Judgment Dragon, Infernoid decks never had to worry about it since the best Infernoids can also summon themselves from the graveyard. And while the deck greatly appreciated cards like Grass and Reasoning to put things into the graveyard, they could also do it with the archetypal tools like Void Imagination, which both gets you their fusion monster and mills 6+ Infernoids for you. Onuncu and Devyati were far and away the best ones to end on. While the Infernoid restriction of needing to control monsters whose total levels and ranks are 8 or lower did mean that they were usually the last thing you wanted to bring out, they were both formidable boss monsters in their own right, being able to wipe either the back row or monsters while also having a negate to protect your board. While having either of them out essentially locked you out of other noids unless you had Void Imagination up, it didn't restrict other summons at all, meaning the archetype mixed really well with others like Lightsworns and Zodiacs. That all said, the deck was quite bricky if you didn't get a good mill engine out. And while the Infernoids can banish from the hand too, losing 3 cards to bring out Onuncu is never where you want them to be. Later mill-focused decks like Tyr fixed the issue by making the monsters you want to mill also be the mill engines. But Infernoids still used to put the fear of God into their opponents once they began to pop off. And at number 3, we have Block Dragon. This level 8 Earth Rock monster must be special summoned from your hand or graveyard by banishing 3 Earth monsters from either location. It prevents your rock monsters from being destroyed by card effects, except by its own. Lastly, if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add up to 3 rock monsters from your deck to your hand, whose total levels equal 8. Block Dragon just reads like a custom card made by someone who really likes the rock type, packing protection, a non-once per turn summon effect, as well as the ability to triple search just for being sent to the graveyard. Still, that's more because at the time it came out, there really were no good rock monsters to pair with this. Block Dragon first began seeing play in competitive areas in a very peculiar build of Burning Abyss, which began running around once Cherubini became a thing. Block Dragon BA was just a huge monster mash pile, playing all sorts of level 3 extenders like Terratop and the Dangers to spam the board. Since it used so many monsters, it was one of the few strategies which could support Second's Light, a better Pot of Greed in that deck. Despite the BAs themselves being dark, there were many Earth monsters you can get into from your graveyard by milling or link summoning, like Gallus and Saryuja, letting you support a Block Dragon engine as well. And just so you have an idea of how good the rock pool was at this time, the most common targets for it were Gigantes and the Rock Spirit. cards from 2003 and 2004 respectively. The deck had a decent amount of success, but the reason why Black Dragon got banned was due to Adamantippators. The deck had multiple ways to get Black Dragon through either Gallant Granite or Union Carrier, and the cards seemed to be made for this archetype, as it would let you get access to all 3 Adamantipator tuners. Adamantipator was the first crazy combo deck of Master Rule 5, showing the dangers of easing up on the summoning restrictions by ending on multiple synchros and links to prevent your opponent from playing. It's because of that we still have Black Dragon banned to this day. And now at number 2, we have Arch Nemesis Protos. This level 11 Dark Worm must be special summoned by banishing 3 monsters with different attributes from your graveyard or face-up field. It cannot be destroyed by card effects, and while it's out, you can declare an attribute of a card on the field to destroy all monsters with that attribute. Then, neither player can special summon monsters with that attribute until the end of the next turn. Just like Black Dragon, Protos was a ticking time bomb during its first few years in the game. While its effect is strong independent of what other cards are around, as Lingering Floodgates offer basically 0 counterplay once they go off, for a long while it wasn't searchable except within its own mediocre archetype, which you really didn't want to include in your deck. However, all of that changed once Sword Soul came out. The deck's focus on worms not only let it abuse older cards from the type, such as the Tenyi and the Yang Zings for maximum value, its archetypal Rhoda in Emergence lets you search for any worm in the game if you already had a synchro out. As an archetype with multiple 1-card synchros and one which straight up searches Emergence, this was trivial to do, and let you get Protos to your hand. It was very easy to get all the attributes for it in the graveyard as well, since the main Sword Souls all had different attributes anyway, like Ecclesia, Taya, and Long Yuan, making it also really easy to summon. Then you can also use its effect to declare Dark to win the branded matchup against cards like Mirror Jade, or use it for water, pop in a Sword Soul token to win the mirror match instead. This led to the card getting banned due to how uninteractive it made going second into Sword Soul, and it stayed banned for a few years before Konami just decided to bring it back on a whim. While Sword Soul had long been power crept at this point, you could now search its searcher, Nemesis Flag, with a generic rank 4 like Infernal Flame Vixen, or a normal spell like Bonfire, which led to the card seeing a lot of play again in many different strategies as an I win button for any single attribute matchup. This all, of course, led to Protos getting banned for a second time, and it's not likely it's coming back anytime soon. And finally, at number 1, we have the Dragon Rulers. This refers to the core set of 4 level 7 dragon monsters, Blaster, Tidal, Redox, and Tempest, which can special summon themselves from your hand or graveyard by banishing 2 cards of their own attribute or 2 dragon monsters, or a combination of the 2 from your hand or graveyard. They all return themselves to the hand during your opponent's end phase though. The Dragon Rulers also all share the effect of being able to search a dragon of their own attribute when they're banished, and they can also all discard themselves from your hand along with a card of their same attribute to do something. Blaster to target and destroy a card, Tidal to send any monster from your deck to the graveyard, Redox to special summon a monster from the graveyard, and lastly Tempest to add any dragon from your deck to your hand. However, you can only use one of their effects total per turn and only once that turn. Basically, the only way to not have the Dragon Rulers take up almost half the list by themselves was to group them all in one slot. Design-wise, these cards were a mistake for the game, ushering in an era of dominance where it was basically impossible to rival their power. The deck was even stronger in the TCG than in the OCG, since we also got the TCG exclusive baby versions of them, which lets you special summon the growed-up counterparts straight from your deck while setting up your graveyard. The Rulers just offered a resource loop like no other deck had before. When you were able to play them all together in a single deck, you'd get a basically infinite loop of advantage, as they banished each other, getting you multiple searches and bodies turn after turn. Their levels all being 7 helped massively too, since the rank 7 pool had both the best monsters to make going first, Dracosac, as well as going second in Big Eye. Both were so good that they still see play in the modern game whenever there are enough meta level 7 monsters around. While the proper Dragon Ruler deck would eventually vanish with repeated hits to the ban list until every ruler was limited, people still often played their respective ruler in decks of the proper attribute, like Blaster and Fire King and Tidal and Mermail, because even generically they were just that good. You could still play one of each together in dragon decks like Mythic Rulers for quite a while, even if it did not have the full power the original deck once did. It took several formats for Konami to get fed up with their presence and ban the archetype entirely. It wouldn't be until 10 years later that we would see the Dragon Rulers all released to the ban list again. And while they aren't a threat like they once were, as their age really is showing, they still got to be an almost rogue strategy for a while due to the new wave of support in the cards like Chasma. Just like banishing a Light and Dark for a Chaos monster once put fear in an opponent's mind, so did banishing a couple of dragons to bring a Dragon Ruler out. For all their powers and competitive relevance throughout the years, there's nowhere these cards could be if not for the first place on this list.